You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Dodge Movie Podcast. This is episode 118, and we are going to talk about the 1986 film Something Wild. We watched it on Amazon Prime. It is free right now if you have a subscription. The director is Jonathan Demme, who also did Silence of the Lambs in 91, Philadelphia in 93, and Rachel Getting Married in 2008. It stars Jeff Daniels, Melanie Griffith, Tracy Walter, John Waters. Oh, and it's the film debut of Ray Liotta. The DP is Tak Fujimoto, who worked on Star Wars, the original one, I'll say from my age. Number 4, A New Hope. And in 99, he did The Sixth Sense. And in 91, he did Silence of the Lambs. And then in 99, he did The Sixth Sense. The writer is E. Max Fry. He also did Band of Brothers in 2001 and Foxcatcher in 2014. And I am going to jump ahead to a little bit of trivia because the script found its way into the hands of Jonathan Demme while the screenwriter was still in film school, and Demme committed to it within 24 hours of reading it. I thought that was good trivia place there. Let's see. The synopsis for this film is a free-spirited woman, quote unquote, kidnaps a yuppie for a weekend of adventure. But the fun quickly takes a dangerous turn when her ex-convict husband shows up. The tagline for this is something different, something daring, and something dangerous. What do you think?
So I think that tagline works great.
Works good. I forgot to state that Dustin Morrow and Lisa Molinelli are back with us for this third week. So you guys, what do you think of that tagline? Does it fit?
I mean, taglines are so tough. I mean, there've been like, 3 or 4 good ones in film history. They're really,
it's a marketing.
They're really hard. I mean, it's hard to like, in space, no one can hear you scream is brilliant. And then that's kind of where it begins. Yeah, You'll Believe a Man Can Fly. That's a great one. Mm-hmm. There just aren't a lot of really
Field
great
of Dreams.
lines.
Did they do If You Build It, They Will Come for Field of Dreams?
I don't think so.
I'm curious.
I don't think
That's
they
just
used
a
it as
memorable line.
tagline.
Yeah. You know, maybe we need a page on the website that lists the taglines for the different films.
It's on every page.
Okay. Well, this is an assignment for a super fan to tell me which taglines did I like.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going back and listening to all the episodes. So you're on your
I'll tell you my favorite one. It was a pull quote from a review, and they used it as their like poster
perfect.
headline. Yeah, it was for the movie Fierce Creatures, which was the movie that brought back the whole cast.
Oh, John
of
Cleese.
Fish Called Wanda.
Yeah.
Together again.
Kevin
Pretty
Kline.
mediocre movie. But anyway, the pull quote they used was, "The critics agree. The cast of A Fish Called Wanda is together again."
I mean, leave it to anything Python adjacent to have a good tagline.
It's really hard to disagree with the critics on that count. Yeah.
All right, Mike, kick us off. What's the pickup line of Something Wild?
Excuse me, can I get my check?
Oh,
And spoken by?
Charles, the character played by Jeff Daniels.
Okay. He's sitting in that little cafe.
Yeah, little dinery kind of thing.
Right. On the corner in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's kind of looking around at the different patrons. And it's like at that moment, he decides he's going to try to dine and dash, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because he's apparently looking for something wild.
Yeah. Well, he's such a straight-laced, rule-following guy that this is the one thing he does in his life that makes him feel like a little bit of a rebel. That's how pathetic his character is at the beginning of the movie by ducking out on a $3 lunch check.
so now remind me, do we see him make that choice?
I don't think so.
I can't remember.
And there are plenty of shots of her in that diner, but I don't remember.
I think she does. I think she sees
Clock him.
it, and because she follows him
Right.
out
She- yeah,
and
that's
pretends to work for the restaurant and demand that he pay his check. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we know what her intentions are a little bit.
Oh, I mean, sort of. I mean, it's hard to imagine. I mean, we're jumping ahead, but like the genius of this movie in some ways is that it is, as much as we like to say occasionally about a movie, oh, it was really unpredictable, I didn't know where it was going. This movie, you really do not know where it is going. Almost from scene to scene, this movie feels like it could go anywhere.
Well, and she misrepresents herself from the very, meaning Melanie Griffith misrepresents herself from the very beginning.
Yeah.
The first thing she does.
The reason that I ask is I was thinking, to me, I felt like I had a memory of her seeing. So it was almost like she found a mark, or she found, oh, here's going to be my entertainment for the weekend. Like, that's why I ask, is because if we saw that, then we kind of know what her motivation is for then the rest of the movie.
I think I'm just not smart enough to have picked up on that, but that's a good call.
Well, it's unclear. At first, it seems like she's kidnapping him to have kind of a little sex romp for the take him to a hotel,
or even just mess with a straight guy.
Yeah, and then it's sort of revealed later that she wants him to masquerade as her husband to please her mother, who's not fooled at all. And then she wants to take him to this class reunion, or high school class reunion. So it just keeps unfolding, and you're always kind of you're not totally sure what her game is. Yeah.
So I had a music teacher when I was in middle school who said that with music, the reason there are these motifs that repeated is because if you repeated the same thing over and over, it'd be boring. But if you never repeated anything, the listener wouldn't know how to follow it, and they would find it confusing. And you mentioned the word unpredictable, and I think that's why I was confused by this film, is because it was so unpredictable. I had a hard time with the characters understanding her motivations, but also his motivations, why he continued to go along with this. I mean, why he even went down this road in the first place. But with a woman of that unpredictable nature, why would he let her handcuff him to the headboard? That seems like his character
That's
would
just
be
your trust issues showing.
Well, but he would have been straight-laced and had trust issues, is my argument. So as much as Melanie Griffith is fun, I had no clue what that character was up to in the film.
But don't you think that she was because she took him to her mother and she was trying to impress her mother. Look, it's my husband. And she was like, play along, and then she took him to the class reunion. So that's her motive. She wants to appear normal in this, see and impress. I mean, we all have felt that. Well, maybe I'm showing my colors, but we all feel that when we go back to high school. Like, we're trying to impress those that we kind of grew up. That's why I drug you to the first one. I was like, look, everybody, I snagged one.
Okay, but if we inverted that and Jeff Daniels had kidnapped her to take her someplace, we would say, oh, that guy's up to no good, right?
No.
Not that just he wants her at his reunion. So I guess that was, for me, is the Melanie Griffith character seems really felonious. Right? And maybe that's the intent behind it. The character far beyond your manic pixie dream girl, right? She's kidnapping people and stealing and all kinds of, I think there's quite a bit of actual drinking while driving.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Like I said last week, the nightmare girl, right?
Yeah.
Not the dream girl.
No.
Yeah. She's a darker take on the manic pixie dream girl, for sure. Yeah.
So do you want to kick us off with kind of some of the things that
I mean, just to remind people that the sequence of films we're looking at this month are called the Yuppie nightmare cycle. It's a cycle of films from the mid 80s about taking a straight-laced yuppie white male character and basically sending him into hell, usually at the hands of a femme fatale or some kind of variation on the manic pixie dream girl, like we've talked about. And in this film, Jeff Daniels is a businessman in New York, and he is basically abducted by a very free spirit, kind of a bohemian nut job, played by Melanie Griffith, who takes him on a wild ride through New Jersey and then rural Pennsylvania, dragging him to see her mother, dragging him to her high school reunion. And then Ray Liotta plays her ex-con husband, who comes in and kind of hijacks the movie. He kidnaps Melanie Griffith, and Jeff Daniels is in pursuit to try to rescue her. And that's a kind of nutshell recap of the plot, but that doesn't tell you anything about how this movie feels or how it plays from scene to scene, which is very unpredictable and fits very much with the other films in the Yuppie Nightmare cycle in the sense that it is a comedic movie, but is very edgy and kind of dark and feels a little dangerous and a little violent, especially by the end of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
We talked last week about tonal shifts or shifting genres in Into the Night, how it would be a screwball comedy in one scene, and then the next scene it would be kind of like almost a horror film or a drama or something. And this movie is a film that has a much slower but even more pronounced shift in genres. This is very much a screwball comedy at the very beginning. And at the end of this movie, if you are not like gripping the arm of your chair and scared out of your pants, then you don't have a beating heart, because it has a really visceral, violent, frightening scene at the end. The climax of this movie is really terrifying, and I would suspect is the thing that got Jonathan Demme the job directing Silence of the Lambs, because it's a real masterpiece of tension. It reminds me of Blood Simple, the first movie by the Coen brothers. It has this incredible fight scene in this bathroom in suburban Long Island. Yeah, it's really great. Demme was a real master of tension. He's famous for a lot of his comedies like Married to the Mob, but he was a really great director of suspense. Silence of the Lambs is the really obvious version of that, but he also did a movie called Rachel Getting Married, which I think Christy mentioned at the beginning, which if you watch it, it's a domestic drama, but it really feels like a horror film. It's a very unsettling, very tense movie, very awkward, very uncomfortable. And he did probably the most famous concert film in history, which was a movie called Stop Making Sense, about the Talking Heads, kind of at the height of their fame. And that actually is a really interesting... It's shot like no other concert movie that you can think of. I think it's in the Criterion collection even, which is really unusual for a concert film. He never shows you the audience. And the effect of that is to almost feel like you feel alternately like you're either on the stage in the band or like you're not being given the release of experiencing a concert in the way that you would otherwise, which is experiencing it with other people, with a crowd, by isolating the crowd from the audience. It's a very strange film, and it feels weirdly tense when you're watching it.
I'm pretty sure I rented that on VHS back in the day, and that explains why I was like, this is a weird concert film. Like, it was not what I was expecting. Because in that era, I don't know if folks were around for that, but that was a big deal. Full-length concert on video were a thing. You would watch all your favorite bands. So that was definitely something unpredictable.
Yeah. And there were always clips of adoring audience members, right? Like looking at the band, and that movie gives you none of that. I mean, it helps that it's David Byrne and Talking Heads, and they were an art pop band, and they did weird things. That's the movie where we all know the sort of famous, the big suit that he wears. Like that's from Stop Making Sense. Stop Making Sense is actually being re-released later this year by the A24 studio. They've restored it and they're putting it back in theaters, which is really cool.
Well, and bringing us back to something wild and music, I mean, David Byrne is actually a part of this movie. The first song in the movie in the opening credits is a David Byrne movie. I think David Byrne and somebody else maybe. But, he's a part of this too. So. And music's a big part of this movie.
This movie has one of the best soundtracks of the 80s, for sure. It's a very unusual, like we were just talking before we were recording, Mike was mentioning Boingo Boingo and what a deep cut he used. Yeah.
That's Not My Slave for those of you who are Boingo fans at home. It's a deep cut,
Yeah. It's also got a ton of world music. There's a lot of music from the Caribbean in this movie. Yeah. It famously ends with Sister Carol, who's a legendary reggae artist from Jamaica, performing a version of Wild Thing.
Yeah, it's great.
And she actually performs it to camera. She plays a waitress, and she sort of comes out on the sidewalk at the end of the movie and plays a scene, and then stays in the sidewalk to perform the song to the camera. It's a very bizarre and totally charming way to end the film.
Well, and it opened with, my note said 3 minutes of just exteriors of New York.
Yeah.
Which again is very a unique choice, right? You don't often see that many exteriors.
And you know what's funny about that to me, something I realized this time when I was watching the movie. I've seen this movie a few times, and I always think of it as this cool downtown New York in the 80s movie, but it actually takes place very little in New York.
You're right.
You leave New York City almost immediately, and you go on this New Jersey, Pennsylvania road trip. It reminds me a little, I mean, After Hours is all, we talked about After Hours a couple weeks ago. That's all in New York, but it is this journey of like the yuppie guy kind of going into the underworld, and there's a similar journey maybe for Jeff Daniels leaving the city and going into like a rural area and a place he doesn't know very well, and he's sort of, I don't know if he's descending into the underworld too, not really, but it's a similar like being whisked away from.
Well, I've heard Fran Lebowitz say this, and I've heard Woody Allen say this, like two diehard New Yorkers say that for them, the experience of going into rural spaces is really terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think for a lot of us, especially people like myself who grew up in a very small town, a very rural small town, like the big city is scary.
Yeah.
Right? The city is a scary space. But if all you know is the city, I can understand how the wide open, dark spaces of the country might be kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if there's something to that. I mean, he is almost immediately whisked away from the city to Jersey, of all places, and then Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
I'm a New Yorker, so to me that's like, oh my God. New Jersey. But yeah, I don't know. I thought a lot about that this time, that it's almost not in New York at all. Like there's very little of it that takes place.
So what did you guys make of the kind of changing of the genre? Did you feel at any point where like by the end of the movie, where you're like, oh, this is not a comedy, it's a thriller? Do you remember feeling that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would go beyond. I would say it felt like it went from, your comedy, perhaps even a romantic comedy in the first third. In the middle, I felt like it went more into suspense. And then the end, I don't know if I would even thriller, but maybe that's a good term for it. But just the violence in the fight, it felt even more almost like a crime, almost it could be a mob film, not just because Ray Liotta's in there, but just the amount of conflict and how long that fight went on, right? So that was more than just, oh my gosh, something happened. That was minutes of rolling around. So it very much, definitely tonally, but it felt like it was a smooth not maybe not smooth, but it was a consistent through line, a transition. It didn't pop back around. It felt like it just slowly evolved. But I do vividly remember a moment like near the end of the film, like, wait a second, what just happened? Because this was Melanie Griffith drinking bourbon in a convertible. How did we get here?
We end up here. Yeah.
I think for me, I didn't really notice because, well, I'll just admit I have trust issues too. So when she started to take him, I didn't feel like, woo, let's just have a fun weekend. She was up to something. So I was suspicious of her kind of from the beginning, and how far is she going to ruin his life, kind of. And then it's interesting watching it today, knowing Ray Liotta's iconography, even though this was his first film. So had I seen it then, but it was like when he shows up, like, oh yeah, now things are going to go really bad because he's usually a bad guy, you know.
It's hard to separate yourself from the iconography of Ray Liotta, but if you can kind of try to, I think he's still, even if you didn't know anything about him, I think you still get this feeling of like, this is a terrifying guy, sharp as a razor. I think he's amazing and super scary.
I would say this is one of the best performances of the 80s by an actor. Like, that's how good he is in this. He's so frightening and unstable. You don't feel like you're watching a guy act. It feels like a real guy. Like,
I think
it feels that dangerous. I mean, and that scene, there's a scene in a diner where Liotta has kind of abducted the Melanie Griffith character, and they are eating in this roadside diner, and they don't know that Jeff Daniels has been kind of following them for 100 miles, looking for a moment where he might have an advantage and be able to rescue the Melanie Griffith character. And they go to this diner, and some police come in and sit in the booth next to Liotta, who is an ex-con who has violated his parole, who has robbed a liquor store and done some other horrible things. And Jeff Daniels realizes this is his chance. And so he goes in and he sits in the booth, and it's some of the best dialogue you'll ever hear. It's just an amazing, tense, funny, surprising scene, and the things that Liotta does as an actor in that scene are just a masterclass in kind of playing a scene for both laughs and tension. Really great.
Yeah, I remember hearing that Arlie Ermy was cast as a drill instructor because he was on set as a technical consultant, and they're like, "Oh, well, you embody this." I felt like Ray Liotta brought that energy to this ex-con. Where if I hadn't known, I would be like, "Holy crap!" They found some guy in New Jersey ex-con on the roadside, and they said, "You look dangerous and sketchy. Get over here." Because he really did, and in that scene you're referring to, I really felt like a lot of it was not with his dialogue. It was the energy and his facial expressions, where you very much saw this guy who he really wanted to kill that Jeff Daniels character.
Yeah.
But he knew the cops were right there. And so that tension came through. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah.
I remember some of that Ray Liotta tension striking me when they're waiting in the convertible outside the convenience store having supposed to be like a real amiable conversation, and Jeff Daniels is kind of reclining and Ray Liotta is kind of leaning over him and like patting him on the stomach or on the chest, and it just was terrifying to me. I was like, please stop exposing your underbelly, Jeff Daniels. It was just like, and they're just like having a nice guys chat, but you can, but it's that look Ray Liotta gives that what he's emanating. So scary.
Yes. I love all the roadside cafe. I mean, that just adds to the flavor and the texture.
So much roadside kitchen there.
Bad motels that they stay in, and the little like gift shop that he goes in to buy like shorts and a shirt. And
I'll take this and I'll take
that. Yeah, I need a new pair of shorts. And he's like stripping in the store, and the clerk's like, "Dude, keep it together."
But I think even her mom's house had that. If I recall correctly, had that sense of very kitschy kind of. And again, I don't know if that's realistic or not for wherever they were supposed to be. Obviously, it's not Philadelphia, right?
Yeah,
but I don't know what part of Pennsylvania that would be.
Yeah, I went to school in central Pennsylvania, and I don't know. It made me think a lot about the times I've spent road tripping in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic and Pennsylvania. I don't know. It seemed true to me. Rang pretty kitchen true.
It's amazing when you said it's some of the best dialogue, and that was written by a film student, so that's awesome that there can be gems even when you're starting out.
Every film student's dream to have your script discovered by Jonathan Demme and turned into a movie that goes into the Criterion collection and becomes a classic.
Well, now I'm going to flip that around though and say, could that be like M. Night Shyamalan, where when you start out of the gate really good, there's nowhere to go but down, right? So maybe that set an unrealistic expectation for this. What else did this screenwriter go on? Did he do other stuff that we know?
Band of Brothers.
Oh yeah,
Foxcatcher.
All right, so he didn't go down. He stayed, kept his altitude.
He's doing well.
Good job.
Foxcatcher's Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I don't know anything about this guy, but maybe there's.
Yeah. I love the guest jeans. I love throughout all of these movies you chose, like revisiting the 80s was really fun. All the costuming, but I loved Audrey's guest jeans.
Well, now I'm going to ask a question here because I'm not quite the haberdasher, but how popular were thigh-high stockings in 1986?
That's a really good question. I wasn't old enough to do the thigh-high stocking thing, but I did notice her. I don't know, Christy, do you remember about?
No, I don't remember wearing them. Or
I think to me that reads as like she's a femme fatale. I guess.
Right, yeah.
And I noted, I thought, I'm glad you brought up clothing, because I was thinking a lot about clothing in this movie too, how she transforms, especially Melanie Griffith and Jeff Daniels too, transforms herself completely.
Right.
She's basically all black from head to toe. Her hair, her dress, her thigh stockings, I think too. And then she like slowly, not even slowly, actually, her hair is bleached, her dress is white. And of course, you just talked about Jeff Daniels changing in the convenience store. He changes clothes several times too, right? He goes from his, uptown corporate suit to kind of a wacky retro
tourist
suit, I think. To the retro suit that he wears for the for
the reunion.
Yeah. And then I think it's the tourist outfit. I think that might be the thing. That's at the end. They both have interesting outfits too, but we don't.
And it's interesting because at the reunion, I just watched this trailer. I think she's wearing like a denim dress, which is pretty like kind of, the mom jeans.
Is
like
it
that's
gingham,
very...
maybe?
I thought it was, it's like a white.
Is it?
I thought it was like a white sundress, almost an eyelet kind of a very like virginal,
okay.
almost
Yes,
kind
yes.
of a dress.
Which I think she was trying to put
yeah.
on.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
Now-
You asked about her hair when we were watching
because
it.
I have a little bit of experience with bleaching for
Oh, yeah.
my beard every Christmas. And I think it would take her hours to get from that black to that
And I
blonde.
said, Mike, it was a wig.
I'm pretty sure.
And he was
Yeah,
like,
it was a wig.
Yeah, it was a wig.
and he goes, really?
I hope it was. You're right that it would take her forever. To go from
Right.
It was a wig.
Well, but it may have been a wig for Melanie, but was it a wig for Audrey?
Yes.
I think it was.
Yes.
I think it's
Okay.
I think
It's too
Audrey's
fast to
wearing a wig,
I
yeah.
think you're right. It was too fast.
Yeah.
All right.
And she's a costumer in a way, right?
Yes.
She's very much costuming herself to look differently.
Well, that's interesting because I talked to a costumer about films, and they say that now most films they don't make the costumes anymore. And so that's why they all love period pieces, because that's the one time where they really get to show their stuff. And I thought, did the costumer read the script and think, oh boy, this one's going to be fun? Right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
especially when you talk about something where they're going, let's say on a road trip, you would think same outfit. Give me 8 of those t-shirts, 8 of those jeans, and then you're done. So this character was fun, probably, I would think, for the costume department, because she did have all of those crazy things going on.
What did you like this movie?
I did. I
did.
like this one. Yeah. I mean, it still gave me that same anxiety
Uneasy.
because I
It's-
kept.
Oh yeah. If you don't get that, you're not a heart beating person. It's designed to slowly close a vise around you, right? It's a movie that, like Mike was saying, it just gets slowly more tense, almost to the point where you're not even noticing it until the end of the movie. You're like, oh, I'm in a horror film now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Very much. I wanted, kind of like with After Hours, just go home. Like, just leave and go home.
But he had nowhere to go.
I just
right?
gonna say that. It occurred like when we were talking about why is he even doing what he's doing. I don't think you start to realize it until you find out his real circumstances. And I don't know. I don't want to spoil.
Oh, you
Well,
can
yeah, the
spoil.
movie-
We spoil.
Okay, we spoil.
Yeah, you think at the beginning of the movie he's got this great balanced
Conventional
family
life.
Yeah, wife and kids.
and then you find out no, his
right.
wife
His
has
life
left
has
him
been
and taken the
destroyed.
kid,
Yeah.
and he doesn't even have any furniture in his
Yep.
house. I mean, he's really living in. He's
Yeah.
a depressed, much like the Goldblum
Yeah.
character in Into the Night. He's a very depressed.
So I think that really
Got
once
it.
you figure that out, you're like, oh, it kind of, to me, it was like, oh, now it makes sense why he's letting this all happen to him.
And plus, the obvious place for him to go home is once Ray Liotta shows up and kidnaps her, and they leave, right? And he's basically, Ray Liotta's beaten the pus out of him, but gives him the opportunity to leave. Like the Lulu character talks Ray Liotta into allowing him to be let go. Mm-hmm. But instead he follows them, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the turning point for his character. And his character actually has a really great arc, I think, in the movie, of like kind of discovering, like the title says, something wild inside of him, that he thinks that he's this depressed guy with nothing going for him at the beginning of the movie. And by the end, he's the hero.
He becomes very brave.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I'd forgotten about the lack of furniture in his house at the end, his Long Island suburban house,
Yeah.
which makes it even creepier and more tense in that house when they're fighting all over the place. I don't know. I just thought that was a cool detail.
What did you think of
Big
Melanie Griffith in this movie?
My kind of overwhelming impression of her in general is a little bit kooky, a little bit cuckoo, right? And so in this film, I really felt like she delivered on that kind of femme fatale. And in some sense, she wasn't a lot of Melanie Griffith. She was more Audrey. And I think that worked. I think sometimes her personality maybe comes ahead of the role. So I thought that worked. I actually, that was a more believable character, even though I still didn't know her motivations. I felt like that landed pretty well. His character, he all saw a different movie than I did, I think, because I didn't respond to his character like that at all. It didn't make any sense to me why he was doing the things he was doing.
Yeah, you kept saying
Right.
that. Why doesn't he just leave? Why
But I
doesn't
saw
he?
her.
But
I thought she
get
did a
now-
great job as a
Even
con
once
artist.
you learn that his life is completely empty and that he has this horrible sort of opinion of himself, and
As Lisa was talking, I was saying, okay, well, I kind of see your point. Maybe that puts it in a different light. But as I watched the film, it didn't land for me, that character. Even though now that you bring it up, I'm like, yeah, I was aware of that reveal when he doesn't have the wife and kid, because that was why that was kind of the tension that was set up earlier. Like, why would this guy go with this woman? Like, what if his wife finds out that he's drinking bourbon and having sex in the afternoon, right? So that there's that. I kind of got that, but I like the look of this film, and kind of, you mentioned mood and style, all those things. The story left me very confused. I didn't connect with it, I think.
It's fair.
I just was thinking about that moment when she finally learns, so Melanie Griffith finally learns that he doesn't have a wife, and she's so mad at him for not having a wife and for lying to her, even though she's been lying to him. I just thought it was such a funny moment where she was so angry.
I just think she's an interesting actress, because I think unless you use her in the right part, she can be really, really bad, right? Like I could think of a number of really terrible Melanie Griffith movies, and they're part of the reason they're terrible is because she's just not the right fit for that part. But kind of like what Mike was saying, she has kind of a natural, kooky, almost old school,
Carol Lombard.
like a Carol Lombard thing, and like she really works in like De Palma's Body Double, and she's very good in Mike Nichols' Working Girl. But I feel like this is the quintessential Melanie Griffith performance. Like this is the movie that of all movies really understood what she can do as an actor, and used it the best.
Now, maybe I'm off kilter here, but I think I get the feeling that she's a lot like that as a person. That the human would be a little kooky, right? Not just in her roles. So to me, the title of Something Wild, I think there may have been stories from during production, because that kind of character, it could be fun, a little bit of spice to life, or it could also be very challenging.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, is that why they put her in the black wig, so that I don't know what she did before this, but I think Working Girl was probably after.
It was after
this. And so when she was Audrey, she reminded me very much of her character in Working Girl, because she was a little bit more straight-laced in her hair and everything.
That's kind of iconic hair, so I agree with you.
And when she had the black hair, I'm trying to think who she reminded me of, but she very much, I guess that's where I got the concern for him, because as Audrey, she just seemed very sweet, and she was struggling. She wanted to impress other people, and so she felt less than. But when she had the black hair, she was like kind of putting on that costume to try to bolster her own confidence, so that she could kind of, I don't know, take advantage of people. Because like when she took him into the restaurant and sat down, and it's like, it's okay, I've got money, and then she left.
Right.
And I think she did have money, because she stole from somebody, so she could have paid that bill, but she left.
Just did it to mess with him.
Just keeps pushing him to do.
Which is where I probably, about the time where I wrote down that she deserves a throat punch from Dom Budgie. But that's another case where you would leave, right, when someone's framed. But that was interesting. I don't know, I'll get your take on it. If you thought at that time not taking a credit card was, I mean, I don't remember a lot of restaurants that didn't take some form of a credit card.
But they were very specific. I remember, like, if you had a MasterCard.
Diners Club or something like that.
Not everybody took Diners Club. Not everybody took American Express. Remember, there was like, I mean, now everybody takes your phone, right?
You're right. It was a little more specific.
There were like signs that said what you took as you went in. And if you didn't have that card, either have cash or don't eat there.
There's still cash only restaurants. I mean, especially in New York, there's some places, I'm sure, that will not run your card. Mike, you're going to have to work harder than that if you're going to find a detail to nitpick in this narrative.
Were there any clocks in this movie, Mike?
Really? You're going to go there?
That was my most proud moment, was when my movie passed the Mike's clock test.
Okay.
He brings it up.
Yeah, I know.
I do bring it up, and I will mention for the listeners, not viewers, listeners, in an upcoming episode, clocks will return.
Oh, that's true. Tune in next week.
I don't think it's next week, but in the next month, more clock talk. Oh, that might be a new segment.
Sorry, I'm
Rhymes
sorry.
and everything.
Okay, did we miss anything? Because I liked this movie. This is a good one. All right, Mike, head trauma.
Well, the only listed one I have is at 136, Ray throws Audrey over the bed and into the wall. So we mentioned this was a fairly violent film in the back third, and Audrey does not escape unscathed.
Right. And a smoochie.
Smoochie, smoochie, smoochie. So I have at 11:30. Should we pause?
I can grab the one from
Yeah.
episode 1.
Audrey mouth assaults Charles after she's robbed the liquor store. And I wrote literally mouth assaults because she doesn't just kiss him. She goes after him like
goes
our
for
dog
it.
gives us kisses.
Okay, and I know there's a lot of driving review. I even have notes
Right.
for driving.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, the choice of the 67 Pontiac GTO convertible says that she's wild,
Okay.
right? The GTO was the original muscle car. That was certainly not a vehicle you would expect a young woman to drive. I did mention before she literally drinks while driving. Not at all a good
Not advised.
role model. Yeah. Oof.
Oh, no.
And so does the Ray Liotta character. But see, that makes a little bit more sense. He's an
Yeah.
ex-con.
Yeah.
He flies in the face of convention.
Lajmas.
So car casting is a little bit off. The hoodlums who cast call Audrey are in a Honda Accord. It doesn't seem like those kind of folks would be in a Honda. But then we'll notice as she starts trading in these vehicles, right? Because then she goes to a Pontiac Catalina convertible, but she sticks with the convertibles. And then there's that Cadillac DeVille that Ray drives is a wonderful car for shooting a movie because it's huge, right? A lot of room for the actors to roll around. Huh. I did enjoy the old-fashioned light bar in the police cruiser. Our younger listeners may not remember back in the day when it was actually a bar with two lights on it. And now, of course, I think they're all internal. And my last note was the 86 Mazda GLC wagon is not the best chase vehicle, but you go with what you got.
I'm enjoying all this car talk. This is stuff that I just don't clock very well in movies. So it's very fun.
Well,
Hear this stuff.
one of the things I talk to the layperson about is how costuming is there for a purpose. It's telling a story too, right? Everybody on the film, including the costume department, is telling the story, and they're involved and they're making conscious choices. And done well, your automotive choice is also part of that. It's part of the sets in a sense, right? Part of the costuming. And I think sometimes you see films where that's not the case, where probably due to budget, they're just like, okay, PA has a Honda, come here. And I get that from a filmmaking perspective, but done well. And as we talked about in films that are set anywhere around LA, it really is a part of the setting.
Fascinating to think of.
I know Mike's a car guy, so that explains that. But which one of you is really into head trauma?
So a comedian that I follow has a theory that if you watch a trailer and there is head trauma within the first 30 seconds of the trailer, it's not going to be a good film.
And it made it into the podcast because I believe the reason that holds true is because it's a cheap gag. And so that's why I started talking about it in films, because sometimes filmmakers will rely on the head trauma for a cheap gag, whether it's for a laugh. I mentioned throat punching became popular with Identity Thief. That I throw that in the same realm. And the other is easy to raise the stakes. So if somebody gets punched who they get punched in the gut, but if they get hit in the head with something, it's an easy way to raise the stakes.
And then just to flush out all of our little categories that we do at the end, since I met him, if there is a kiss in a film, he says, smoochie, smoochie, smoochie.
What are you, 12?
She is actually, I think, selling me either short or long. I don't know which. I don't think it's been my entire life.
No, since I'm sorry, I misspoke. Since I've known him.
I don't even know if that's accurate.
If he's been doing it since you knew him, then he was doing it when he was 12.
So much so that our children would catch him sometimes, and they would text me. We'd be watching a movie and they'd text me, Dad didn't say it this time. And then sometimes he would, like, there'd be a delay or he would do it. And so it's become like our children are aware that
family
that
touchstone.
you say it. I don't think you even it's like a reflex. You see a kiss and you just say it.
Okay,
So let's put Mike on the couch here. What's the source of your discomfort with displays of affection on screen?
He's celebrating.
It's a celebration. Okay.
Yeah, because he loves love. And so, and usually, they happen in the third act. It's, because he watches mostly romantic comedies. And that's
my jam.
That's the triumphant finale is the two get together.
So what does he say if there's a full-on sex scene?
I don't have anything. I need to get one, though.
You might do your little...
Oh, the
You
purr.
do it. I always sound like I'm...
Oh.
The purr, yeah.
Like Dakota O'Brien.
Yeah.
If I do it, I just sound like I'm clear.
That seems like a good candidate.
He goes,
Yeah.
Like, that's odd.
every time there's a sex scene, Mike clears his throat.
That would totally be worthy of some
would
couch
be-
time.
That would be very confusing.
Tell me about your mother.
You would have some things to work out.
Yeah.
If that was the case.
Plus, I just love adding sound effects, so I had to
Yeah,
find
right.
things.
There you go.
It's my,
There you go.
I wish I was part of a morning zoo or something,
it.
apparently.
Well, I'm glad we were able to go behind the scenes.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember little
Podcast.
You're
BTS.
welcome,
This is a treat
listeners.
for all your listeners.
All right, shall we go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
Okay. I could not find a budget for this one either. I don't know if they just weren't reporting or what, but IMDb gave it a 6.9 out of 10. Critics loved it at 91%. And this is a pretty big difference, I would say, with audiences. They gave it 69%. So the critics...
It's a weird movie. All these they're cult movies, and as we know, cult movies, some people are not going to like them.
Right.
Otherwise, they would be mainstream hits, not cult movies.
Right. We
Yeah.
probably wouldn't remember it.
Yeah.
Also, it's just under 2 hours at hour 54. It's rated R, and it is, I think I maybe already said this, is comedy, crime, romance. And back to the budget, though, it did make 8.3 million. And adjusted for inflation today, that would be like 20 million. I have a super fan, RJ, likes the adjusted for inflation budget number. So we do that just for him.
It helps me to get a sense of like
Just
what that really
perspective.
means. Yeah.
It's Religosio Primavita Studio. I've never heard of that. Ray Liotta won.
Sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
It does. Ray Liotta won the Best Supporting Actor Award at the Boston Film Society, or the Boston Society of Film Critics Award. Melanie Griffith was nominated for her performance, and Jeff Daniels and Ray Liotta won for Best Performance at the Golden Globes that year. So,
That's cool.
yeah. All right, everybody, we got one more for this month. We are going to be talking about Miracle Mile next week, and join us. And don't forget to go back and listen to the first one, because you will have the gift of knowing what the theme is, as well as you will hear about Dustin and Lisa's credentials and their bios. But never forget,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.